The intergalactic research station floated quietly among the stars. Every hallway was shining and full of strange machines, but at night, when most workers slept, only one man stayed awake. A tired human janitor named Mark. Mark walked slowly, pushing his cleaning cart. His uniform was old and full of stains. His shoes made small squeaks on the metal floor. Nobody looked at him during the day. He was invisible to most people, just the janitor. But Mark didn't mind. He had a secret that was more important than anything else in the universe. When his night shift ended, Mark never went back to the sleeping quarters. Instead, he took the long way down to the dark, unused parts of the station, the old cargo bay where no one went anymore. The door there was rusty and half-broken. He pressed a small code and the door opened with a soft hiss. Inside, two small shapes were waiting for him, Leary and Caro. They were not human. Their skin shimmered like silver moonlight, and their eyes glowed faint blue in the dark. They had thin lines across their cheeks that sparkled softly when they smiled. Leary ran to him first, her small arms wrapping around his leg. Caro followed, holding a piece of broken wire like a toy. Mark smiled even though his eyes looked tired. "Hey, you two," he whispered softly. He spoke with his hands, moving his fingers gently. Leary and Caro smiled and copied his signs. They couldn't hear, but they understood him perfectly. He took out a small bag of food he had hidden earlier, bread, some fruit paste, and water. The twins' eyes brightened. They sat on an old blanket, giggling in silence as they ate. Mark watched them with warmth in his heart. Years ago, he had found them, small, frightened, and alone, when an alien shuttle crashed near the outer sector. No one came to claim them. The military wanted to take them for study. Mark couldn't let that happen. So he hid them. He gave up his room, his savings, even his comfort, all for the two alien children who had no one. They couldn't speak or hear, but they spoke through their hands and their eyes. They called him Da, with a small sign that looked like a heart. Every night after work, Mark cleaned up the cargo bay, fixed small machines for them to play with, and told stories with drawings on the walls. The twins would point and laugh, making tiny chirping noises that only they could make. But lately, Mark had noticed something strange. Leary's skin had started glowing brighter than before. Lines of gold light appeared when she laughed. Caro's eyes sometimes flickered like fire when he was scared. And last night, when Mark was fixing a broken heater, he saw symbols on their arms, shapes that looked like crowns and stars. He didn't understand them, but he knew they meant something important. That night, as the twins slept beside him, Mark opened his old communicator to check the news feed. He scrolled past the usual updates until a message caught his eye. Breaking news. The Zellari Empire continues search for missing royal heirs. The picture made his heart stop. Two small alien children with glowing blue eyes, just like Leary and Caro. His hands shook. "No, it can't be," he whispered. But deep down he knew. The twins he had saved and loved for years were not just lost children. They were royal blood. Mark turned off the screen quickly, afraid someone might trace the signal. His heart pounded hard in his chest. If the Zellari Empire found out he was hiding their heirs, they would destroy him. Maybe even the whole station. He looked at the sleeping twins. Their small hands were curled up, their faces peaceful. Leary dreamed softly, her skin glowing with that same golden light. Caro held onto Mark's jacket like he was afraid he might disappear. Mark swallowed hard. "I don't care who you are," he said quietly. "You're my kids now, and I'll keep you safe." He sat awake for hours, listening to the soft hum of the station. Outside, stars blinked quietly, unaware of the danger growing near. Suddenly, the walls trembled slightly. A low sound echoed through the station, the kind of sound Mark had only heard once before, during a royal visit long ago. It was the deep roar of a warship entering orbit. Mark stood up quickly and peeked out the small window. A massive ship with royal Zellari markings was approaching the station, dark purple lights shining from its wings. He felt his stomach twist. "No," he whispered, panic creeping in. "They found you." He turned back to the sleeping twins and took a deep breath. Tomorrow everything would change. For now, he watched over them quietly. A tired janitor guarding the galaxy's most precious secret, and above them, the alien queen's ship slowly descended from the stars. Morning light spread through the intergalactic research station, turning the metal walls gold. Mark tried to act normal as he pushed his cleaning cart through the hallways. His hands moved fast, but his heart felt heavy. All night he had not slept. He kept thinking about the royal symbol glowing on Leary and Caro's arms, and the news headline that said, "Missing heirs of the Zalari Empire." He wanted to believe it was just a coincidence, but deep inside, he knew it wasn't. The twins he had raised for 6 years were not just lost children, they were the queens. Mark moved past the security post. A loud hologram flickered on the wall. The same message was playing again. The royal heirs of Zalari, Leary and Caro, were lost during a transport attack 6 years ago. The queen demands their safe return. Any being found hiding them will face punishment by death. Mark stopped for only a second. The image of the queen appeared next, tall, shining, and cold-eyed. Her voice echoed like thunder even through the speakers. No mercy for those who hide royal blood. He turned away quickly before anyone noticed the sweat on his forehead. The guards around the station were suddenly everywhere, scanning rooms, checking logs, asking questions. Drones flew through the hallways like silent wasps, shining lights into vents and storerooms. Mark knew it was only a matter of time before they checked the old cargo bay. He had to move the twins again. That evening, after everyone left, Mark walked quietly back to the cargo bay. The door opened with a soft hiss. The twins were awake, sitting on the floor and building something out of scrap metal, a small robot shaped like a bird. When they saw him, they ran over, smiling. Leary waved her hands in their sign language, asking, "Story time?" Mark smiled faintly but shook his head. He signed back, "Not tonight. We have to move." Caro tilted his head in confusion. "Move? Where?" Mark knelt down beside them. "It's not safe here," he said softly, even though he knew they couldn't hear. He signed the words again, slowly this time. Leary's blue eyes widened. She touched his face gently, sensing his fear. Caro clung to his arm. Mark sighed. "We'll be fine," he whispered. "But we have to go now." He grabbed a small pack, food, blankets, and a few of their handmade toys. Then he opened a panel behind an old machine, revealing a dark tunnel that led deep into the maintenance systems of the station. The tunnels were narrow, filled with dust and broken cables. Mark led the way, holding a small flashlight. The twins followed, their glowing skin lighting the darkness. For a moment, everything was quiet, until Mark heard the faint buzz of drones echoing behind them. His blood ran cold. He pressed his finger to his lips and signed, "Quiet." They moved faster. The tunnel ended at a maintenance room near the lower deck. From there, they could reach the old escape pods, but when Mark peeked out through the vent, he froze. 3 armed guards were standing nearby, scanning the area. One of them was holding a small device, and it beeped softly. "Signal found nearby," one said. "Unregistered life forms, non-human." Mark's heart dropped. They had found the twins' energy signatures. He turned to the kids and whispered, "Stay back." He grabbed a small can from his cleaning belt, a bottle of high-pressure foam used for cleaning engines. He opened the vent quietly and rolled the can out. A second later, whoosh, white smoke burst through the hallway. The guards shouted, blinded. Mark crawled out fast, pulled the twins after him, and ran in the opposite direction. "Come on, hurry," he whispered. They reached the old freight elevator. It was rusty, but it still worked. Mark slammed the switch. The doors closed just as the smoke cleared behind them. The elevator shook and began moving upward. Leary grabbed his hand, scared. Mark squeezed it tightly. "Almost safe," he said, though his voice trembled. But just then, the elevator stopped halfway with a loud clang. Red lights flashed. The emergency system locked it down. Mark looked at the control panel, hacked remotely. Someone was tracking them. A voice came through the speaker, deep and calm. "You can't run forever, human. Return the Queen's children." Mark didn't answer. He turned to the twins, who were staring at him with wide eyes. They didn't understand everything, but they knew they were in danger. He pulled them close. "No one's taking you," he said. "Not while I'm breathing." He pried open the elevator's top panel and helped the twins climb out into the shaft. They crawled along the side rails while alarms echoed below. As they disappeared into the darkness, Mark thought of one thing. He had saved them once before. He would do it again, even if it cost him his life. And far above, in her golden ship, Queen Elira watched the station from her throne, her eyes glowing with fury and grief. "Find them," she ordered. "I want my children back." The hunt had begun. The maintenance tunnels were cold and narrow, filled with the hum of hidden power lines. Dust fell from the metal walls as Mark crawled forward, his flashlight flickering weakly. Behind him, Leary and Caro followed close, their small glowing hands clutching his uniform. The sound of drones echoed faintly in the distance. Mark's muscles ached, but he didn't stop. He had one goal: to keep the twins safe. The Queen's soldiers were everywhere now, searching every floor of the research station. Patrol lights flashed through vents. Heavy boots clanged against metal walkways above. He whispered under his breath, though he knew the twins couldn't hear. "Don't worry, I've got you." They reached a small chamber where the tunnel widened into a maintenance room. Old tools hung from the walls, and a flickering screen showed parts of the station map. Mark sat down, breathing heavily. The twins watched him with worried faces. Leary touched his arm, asking silently if he was hurt. Mark smiled weakly. "I'm okay," he said, signing the words carefully. Then he signed again. "You're both safe. That's what matters." Caro sat beside him, tracing the dust with his finger, drawing a simple heart. Leary leaned her head against Mark's shoulder. In that quiet moment, even with danger so close, it felt like a family again. But peace didn't last long. The screen in the corner suddenly blinked. Security. Alert. Lower levels sealed. A map flashed, showing red sections spreading across the tunnels. They were being trapped. Mark stood quickly. He knew they couldn't stay underground much longer. The only way out now was through the old loading bay, the one connected to the emergency shuttle docks. If they reached that, maybe they could escape into space and hide on one of the outer moons. He packed up the little food they had left, then took a deep breath. "Come on, kids," he said softly, signing, "We move again." They crawled through another series of tunnels until they reached a grated vent overlooking the lower cargo deck. The area was full of broken machines, stacked crates, and shadows. It looked empty, for now. Mark helped the twins down quietly. They landed softly, their small feet making almost no sound. He looked around and found a half-open control door. Perfect. From there, he could reroute the power and unlock the dock. He turned to the twins. "Hide here," he signed. "Don't move until I come back." Leary shook her head, frightened, and held his hand tightly. Her glowing eyes pleaded, "Don't go." Mark smiled gently. "I'll be right back, promise." He placed her small hand on his chest. "Promise," he repeated aloud. Then he slipped away into the shadows. Inside the control room, the lights were dim. He moved carefully, wiping sweat from his face. He had cleaned this place hundreds of times before, but tonight it felt like a maze. He found the power terminal and began typing in override codes. The screen buzzed. Access denied. He tried again using an old janitor's maintenance code. This time the panel flickered and turned green. Come on," he whispered. Finally, a small message appeared. Emergency dock unlock. In progress. Just then, he heard voices outside. Heavy boots. Metal armor. He crouched low and peeked through the doorway. 3 royal guards were scanning the area. Their leader carried a glowing rod, a scanner tuned to detect Solari DNA. Mark's blood ran cold. If that scanner passed near the twins' hiding place, it would light up instantly. He needed a distraction. He grabbed a cleaning bottle from his belt, a thick chemical he used to scrub the ship's engines, and threw it against the far wall. It exploded with a burst of white smoke. The guard shouted and turned toward the noise. Mark ran out the opposite side, grabbing a metal rod from the floor. He hit the power conduit near them. Sparks flew everywhere, lighting the air like lightning. The guard stumbled back, shouting. "Saboteur!" one yelled. Mark didn't look back. He sprinted toward the twins. "Run!" he yelled as loud as he could, even though they couldn't hear. Leary saw his face and understood. She grabbed Caro's hand and they dashed toward the exit. But as they reached the door, a flash of light hit the floor beside them. A blaster shot. Mark turned and saw the lead guard raising his weapon again. Without thinking, Mark jumped in front of the twins, shielding them with his body. The shot hit a pipe behind him, sending sparks flying over his arm. He didn't stop. He kicked the guard's weapon away, swung the metal rod, and knocked the soldier down. The others hesitated. They didn't expect a janitor to fight like this. Mark turned to the twins, his voice breaking. "Go, get to the dock!" Leary cried silently, shaking her head. Caro grabbed his sleeve. Mark knelt and signed with trembling hands. "I promise to protect you. Now go." The twins hesitated one more second, then ran toward the open dock door as alarm screamed across the deck. Mark stood between them and the soldiers, gripping his rod like a sword. He was just a janitor. But tonight he was a father, and no soldier in the galaxy would take his children. The cargo deck shook with alarms. Red lights flashed along the ceiling like angry eyes. Smoke from the broken pipes filled the air, and the sound of boots echoed closer. Mark's breath came in sharp bursts as he ran after Leary and Caro. His left arm burned where a spark had hit him, but he didn't stop. The twins had reached the emergency dock. He had to get them on that shuttle before the guards arrived. When he turned the corner, he saw them standing beside the old ship. The shuttle was rusty, half-broken, but its engine still glowed faint blue. Leary was trying to pull the control lever, but it wouldn't move. Caro banged on the console with his small hands, confused and scared. Mark rushed forward and grabbed the lever. Come on, he muttered. The shuttle lights flickered weakly. Then a deep voice echoed from behind him. You are surrounded, human. Step away from the vessel. Mark froze. Slowly, he turned around. At least 10 soldiers stood there, their black armor shining in the red emergency light. Blasters aimed directly at him. And in the middle of them stood a tall figure in silver, the royal commander of the Zalari Guard. His mask was shaped like a hawk, and his voice was calm but deadly. You have something that belongs to the Queen, the commander said. Hand them over and you may live. Mark stood in front of the twins, spreading his arms protectively. His voice was steady, even though fear twisted in his chest. They're just children. They don't even know who you are. The commander stepped closer. They are not children. They are heirs to the throne, and you are a criminal for hiding them. Mark tightened his grip on a nearby wrench. His heart pounded. I didn't hide them for power. I did it because they were alone. You left them to die. The soldiers raised their blasters. The commander lifted a hand, stopping them. He tilted his head slightly. You are brave for a janitor, but foolish. You cannot fight a royal army. Mark smiled weakly. Maybe not, but I can buy them time. Then he slammed the wrench against the side panel of the dock. Sparks exploded, and the blast doors began to close between him and the soldiers. The commander shouted, Stop him! Blaster fire filled the air. Mark ducked, pulling the twins behind a crate. The metal walls hissed as energy bolts hit them. The smell of burning steel filled the room. He looked at Leary and Caro. They were shaking, holding hands tightly. It's okay, he signed quickly. We'll make it. He pointed toward a vent above them. Climb, go. Leary hesitated, eyes full of tears. She signed, Come with us. Mark shook his head. I'll follow. Caro climbed first, then Leary. Mark pushed a heavy crate under the vent so they could reach it. As soon as they disappeared inside, he turned back toward the soldiers. The door was half open now, enough for one person to squeeze through. The commander was still there, his mask glowing faint blue. You can't hide them forever, he said. Mark stood his ground. Maybe not, but you'll have to go through me first, the commander sighed. So be it. He charged forward, his blade igniting with light. Mark swung his wrench, metal clanging against energy. Sparks flew as they fought in the narrow space. Every hit sent pain through Mark's arm, but he refused to back down. The commander was faster, stronger. With one sharp move, he knocked the wrench from Mark's hand and kicked him to the floor. The blade hovered near his neck. You fight well, the commander said softly. But this ends now. Before he could strike, a bright flash filled the room. The console behind him exploded. Caro had pressed the emergency energy valve from inside the vent. Blue fire erupted across the wall, throwing the commander backward. Good job, kid, Mark muttered, struggling to his feet. He grabbed his wrench again and ran toward the shuttle. But then, everything went quiet. The alarm stopped. The air turned heavy, almost electric. A shadow fell across the floor as the soldiers dropped to one knee. A cold, powerful voice echoed through the smoke. Enough, Mark froze. The soldiers bowed their heads. Through the haze, a tall figure stepped forward, the alien queen herself. Her presence filled the room like a storm. Her armor shone with violet light and her eyes glowed like two suns. Every guard lowered their weapon instantly. Mark stood still, breathing hard, sweat and dust on his face. The queen looked at him, then at the vent above where two pairs of small glowing eyes watched silently. So, she said, her voice calm but sharp, this is the human who dares to keep my children. Mark didn't move. They're not yours, he said quietly. Not anymore. The queen's eyes flickered. Not with anger, but something else. Pain. "You have no idea what you've done," she whispered. Mark met her gaze without fear. "You're wrong," he said. "I know exactly what I've done." And above them, hidden in the shadows, the twins watched their mother and father face each other for the first time. The moment felt like the whole galaxy was holding its breath. The air in the cargo bay felt heavy, like it could break under the silence. The smoke cleared slowly, revealing the tall, glowing figure of Queen Elira, ruler of the Zalari Empire. Her violet armor shimmered like liquid metal, and her eyes glowed with sadness hidden behind cold fury. Every soldier dropped to one knee. The commander bowed his head. Only Mark stood tall, his uniform torn, face covered in soot, one arm bleeding slightly from a burn. He looked out of place before the shining queen like a shadow standing before a star. From the vent above, Leary and Caro peeked out. Their glowing eyes reflected both fear and curiosity. They had never seen another of their kind, never seen someone who looked like them, only grander, colder, unreachable. The queen's voice broke the silence. It was calm, smooth, but carried power that made even the air hum. "Human, you dare to keep what belongs to me?" Mark didn't bow. "They're not things, Your Majesty," he said softly. "They're children. They don't belong to anyone." A small murmur went through the guards. No one ever spoke to the queen that way. The queen stepped closer, her eyes glowing brighter. "Do you have any idea who they are?" she asked. "They are my blood, my heirs, the future of my empire. You stole them." Mark shook his head slowly. "I didn't steal them. I found them. They were scared, hungry, and alone. Nobody came looking. I waited, I searched, but the only ones who cared for them were me." The queen's eyes narrowed. "And so you thought you could raise royal blood like pets?" Mark's jaw tightened. "No," he said, his voice low but firm. "Like family." The word family seemed to echo in the large room, soft but powerful. Queen Elira's face changed slightly, a tiny flicker in her expression, like a memory. But she quickly hid it. "You broke galactic law," she said. "A human who hides royal heirs from their empire is a traitor to the crown. By law, you should die where you stand." Mark looked up at her without fear. "Then do it. But make sure they don't see." The queen blinked, caught off guard. "What?" Mark pointed toward the vent where Leary and Caro were watching silently. "They're deaf," he said quietly. "They don't hear your threats, but they can see. They can see what you do, what kind of mother they'll have." The queen turned her head slightly, her gaze lifting to the vent. Two small glowing faces stared down at her. The sight made her breath catch for a moment. She took a slow step forward. "Come here, my children," she said softly in her own language, the words echoing through the room like music. But the twins didn't move. They didn't understand her word, and even if they did, they didn't know her. Leary shook her head, fear in her glowing eyes. She reached down toward Mark instead, signing with small hands. "Duh?" The queen frowned. What is that?" Mark looked up at her. "That's how they call me," he said quietly. "It means Dad." For a moment, the queen said nothing. Her eyes softened, her hand lowering slightly. A strange silence spread across the room. Even the soldiers looked unsure. "They think of you as their father?" she asked, voice almost trembling. Mark nodded slowly. "I didn't plan it, I just couldn't leave them alone. They needed someone to love them. So I did." The queen turned away for a second, her glowing eyes dimming. Her voice grew quieter, almost like she was speaking to herself. "When their ship was attacked, I thought they were dead. I searched every planet, every ruin. I lost half my fleet, and now they've been with a human all this time." Mark took a step forward. "Then you should be glad they're alive," he said. "They've grown. They're strong. They laugh, they draw. They build things. You'd be proud of them." The queen looked back at him, pain in her face. "Proud? You think I can be proud knowing my children were raised in the dirt by a janitor?" Mark smiled faintly. "I clean floors, yes, but I also cleaned their tears." For a moment there was no sound, only the hum of the ship engines in the distance. The queen stared at him, this tired, broken man who had nothing but love. And in his eyes she saw something she hadn't seen in years. Humanity. She turned back toward her soldiers. "Take the children," she said slowly. The twins gasped silently and shook their heads, crawling halfway out of the vent. Leary's hands moved fast. No, don't go. Mark reached out to calm them, but the guards moved forward. The Queen watched, her face unreadable. Mark stood still, his chest rising and falling heavily. If you take them, he said, don't make them royal. Make them happy. That's all I ever tried to do. The Queen's eyes lingered on him for a long time. The soldiers stopped. Something was changing in her. Something deep. The fire in her eyes faded into sorrow. You're a fool, she whispered. But maybe. A good one. Then she looked up at the twins again, her expression softening. Come to me, little ones. I won't hurt you. For the first time. Her voice was gentle. Not a queen's command, but a mother's plea. And slowly the twins crawled out of the vent, torn between two worlds, one of royal blood and one of love. The cargo bay had fallen quiet. The soldiers lowered their weapons, unsure of what to do. Smoke drifted in thin lines from the walls, and the hum of the great ship pulsed softly through the floor. Queen Elira stood tall, her silver armor reflecting the soft blue light of her children's glowing skin. Leary and Caro stood only a few steps away now, small, frightened, and trembling. They looked at her with wide eyes full of questions they could not ask. The Queen took one careful step forward. Her voice, once sharp as a blade, was now softer, unsteady. My little ones. I thought I lost you forever. Her words echoed, but the twins didn't react. They didn't understand her language, nor could they hear the sorrow in her voice. They looked to Mark instead, their human father, the man who had raised them in secret, the man who had protected them even from her. Mark's face was pale, covered with dust and sweat. He watched the Queen silently. He knew this moment would come, the moment when the truth stood between him and his children like a wall made of stars. Leary looked up at him and signed, Who is she? Mark hesitated. His throat tightened. He moved his hands slowly, carefully forming the signs. She's your mother. The twins froze. Caro blinked, then looked back at the Queen. She stood there, tears beginning to gather in her glowing eyes. She saw Mark's hand gestures and frowned in confusion. What is he doing? Mark sighed. They can't hear you. They're deaf. That's how we talk. The Queen's eyes widened slightly. Deaf? She repeated softly. He nodded. Since birth, I think. They don't know sound, but they know words in signs. They know feelings. The Queen looked back at her children and really looked this time. Leary tilted her head, watching her mother's lips move without meaning. Caro stepped back, hiding half behind Mark. They looked lost, trapped between two worlds, one of blood and one of love. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then the Queen said quietly, Show me. Mark hesitated, but then he nodded. He crouched down and called the twins closer. He signed to them, It's okay. She wants to learn. The twins exchanged a look, unsure, but curiosity won. Leary took a small step forward. She moved her hands slowly and signed, Hello. Mark translated softly. She said hello. The Queen blinked, then copied the movement awkwardly. Her armored fingers bent clumsily, the gesture not quite right. Leary giggled, a soft, breathy sound with no voice, and corrected her. The Queen tried again, better this time. Mark watched quietly, his chest heavy with both pride and sorrow. For a moment, the scene was almost peaceful, a mother learning to speak in silence. But then the heavy sound of boots echoed again. The royal commander entered the room, his mask cracked from the earlier blast. He looked from the Queen to Mark, his tone cold. Your Majesty, the Council demands your decision. The human has broken imperial law. He must be executed. The Queen didn't answer. If we let him live, the commander continued, it will show weakness. The court will not forgive this. A human cannot defy the crown and walk free. Leary and Caro didn't understand the words, but they saw the soldiers' weapons lift again. They felt the danger in the air. Leary grabbed Mark's arm tightly, her small, glowing fingers shaking. Mark looked up at the Queen. I'm not asking for mercy, he said quietly. Just don't let them grow up afraid. The Queen's hands clenched at her sides. Her expression broke for the first time. Pain and pride, guilt and confusion all mixed in her glowing eyes. Why would you risk everything for children, not even your own? She asked. Mark smiled faintly, his voice tired but firm. Because they are my own. Not by blood, but by choice. That answer hit her harder than any weapon. The Queen turned away, staring at the floor. The commander waited, ready to give the order. The soldiers' fingers hovered over their triggers. Finally, she lifted her head. "Lower your weapons," she said. The commander froze. "Your Majesty?" Her voice turned to steel. "I said lower them." The soldiers obeyed instantly. The commander hesitated, his mask hiding his shock. The Queen walked closer to Mark, her eyes glowing brighter.
"The law says you must die," she said slowly. "But the law has never seen what love can do." She looked at her children again.
They were watching, both of them, confused, hopeful, scared. She realized then that no royal code could ever replace what she saw before her. A broken human who had given them life, warmth, and family when she could not. "You taught my children something I could not," she said softly. "You taught them to love without fear." Mark lowered his eyes. "I just did what any father would." The Queen took a deep breath. "Then you will live, Mark, not as my prisoner, but as their father." Gasps echoed through the soldiers. The commander stepped forward angrily. "This is against the law." The Queen turned on him sharply, her voice echoing like thunder. "Then the law will change." Silence fell again. The commander stepped back, defeated. The Queen looked at Mark one last time. "You have my gratitude and my respect." Leary and Caro ran to her then, not out of fear but curiosity and wonder. They touched her shining armor, their small fingers tracing the glowing lines. The Queen smiled faintly, tears finally falling. In that moment, no words were needed. No sound was required, only silence and understanding. It was the first time the galaxy had seen peace spoken through hands instead of war, and in that silence, a new kind of truth was born. The station floated quietly above a blue moon, its metal wings shining in the light of a distant sun. Inside the main hall, silence ruled, the kind of silence that carried both fear and hope. Queen Elira sat upon a tall, curved throne of silver light. Her armor had been replaced by royal robes that shimmered like starlight. Around her stood the royal guards, the commander, and the council of the Zilari Empire, cold, proud beings who had served her for centuries. Before them stood Mark, the human janitor who had once cleaned their halls in silence. His hands were rough, his uniform torn, but his eyes were calm. Behind him stood Leary and Caro, holding each other's glowing hands tightly. The Queen's gaze lingered on them, her children, alive after 6 long years of mourning. But the council did not share her relief. "Your Majesty," one counselor said, his voice sharp as glass, "this human broke royal law. He stole the heirs of the Empire. If you spare him, it will destroy our honor." Another voice joined in. "Our enemies will laugh at us. A janitor living as the father of our royals? It is shameful." Mark didn't respond. He just kept his eyes on the twins. He didn't care what happened to him. He only cared that they would live safely. The Queen raised a hand and the room fell silent. Her voice was calm, but it carried power that made the walls hum. "You speak of honor," she said. "But what is honor without compassion? What is law without heart?" The council exchanged uncertain looks. The commander stepped forward. "Your Majesty, emotion clouds judgment. You cannot let this man's humanity blind you. He defied the crown." The Queen turned her golden eyes on him. "And I defied death to find my children. Do you call that blindness?" No one answered. She rose slowly from the throne. Her robe flowed like liquid light as she stepped down toward Mark. The soldiers tensed, unsure if she meant to punish or to pardon. Mark stood still, his heart pounding. He looked tired, worn out by nights of running and hiding. But his eyes never left Leary and Caro. The Queen stopped before him. For a long moment she said nothing. Then she spoke softly, so softly even the humming lights seemed to listen. "When I lost them, I thought the stars had gone dark. My empire grew stronger, but I did not. I forgot what love was. You, a human, reminded me." Mark swallowed hard. "I didn't do anything special," he said quietly. "I just took care of 2 kids who needed someone." Her lips curved into the smallest smile. "And yet that is more than all my armies have ever done." She turned toward the council. "I have made my decision." Every eye in the hall locked on her. The air felt heavy again, like the whole galaxy was waiting. "This human will not be executed," the Queen said clearly. "He will be honored. From this day forward, Mark of Earth shall be recognized as guardian of the heirs." The council gasped. The commander's jaw tightened. "Your Majesty, that title is sacred." It belongs only to royal protectors. The Queen's voice turned sharp as lightning. Then let it be rewritten. Let history remember the day a human janitor did what empires could not. Protect the future. Mark stood frozen. The title meant nothing to him, but the look in the twins' eyes, pride, love, relief, meant everything. Leary ran forward and hugged his leg, her glowing skin lighting his worn uniform. Caro joined her, their small hands signing "Da safe." Mark knelt down, hugging them both tightly. He whispered, "Always." The Queen watched them with a mixture of awe and pain. She had spent years commanding fleets, moving planets, and shaping laws, yet she had never seen a bond this pure. She stepped closer and placed her hand gently on Leary's head. The girl looked up, curious. The Queen smiled faintly. "You look like your father," she whispered. Mark blinked, unsure if he heard right. "I'm not," the Queen raised a hand. "You are. Blood is born. Family is chosen." For the first time, the soldiers lowered their heads. Not in fear, but in respect. Even the cold commander stepped back silently, realizing this was history unfolding. The Queen turned to the gathered council. "From this day," she declared, "let every species, human or alien, know that love has no boundaries." The heart of one man changed a queen. The hall fell quiet. No one dared to speak. Then, slowly, the Queen did something no one had ever seen before. She knelt before Mark. The guards gasped. The Queen of Zalari, the most feared ruler in the galaxy, bowed to a janitor. Mark stepped back, speechless. "You don't have to—" She looked up, her eyes glistening. "I do, because without you, my children would not know love." The twins ran between them, grabbing both their hands, one human, one royal. 3 glowing lights joined in the center of the great hall, and for the first time in centuries, the Empire witnessed something greater than power. It witnessed forgiveness. Outside, the stars shimmered brighter than ever. The great ship turned toward the horizon, carrying a queen who had found her heart, and a janitor who had found his family. And somewhere deep in the galaxy's endless silence, a message seemed to whisper through the stars. Sometimes, the smallest human can change the course of worlds.